Hello, good morning. How are you doing, Ryan?
Doing well. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. I had a early morning. I had attended a networking group that I'm a part of in town, so I've been up since 6. I'm caffeinated. I did a presentation on myself this morning to the group, so we're uh we're firing on all cylinders.
Did you have a walking deck?
I mean, I did make a presentation about me, and I did leverage Copilot to help me create the presentation, which I think for an about me presentation, it could have done a better job if I would have had like my personal computer to create it. With
Are you
maybe
full of all
with
your
maybe my
personal stuff?
saved photos and things like
Oh,
what
yeah.
would be my work device. I don't have much personal, things on here, so I couldn't point it towards, hey, here's my, photo library, or here's different things that are interesting. So it did pretty good overall, though. I mean, really, when you think about, like, I feel like we all have that little bit of maybe writer's block or difficulty when like, man, I got to create something from scratch. Having the Copilot there to help at least create the framework was
Yeah.
super helpful. And then I just went in and tweaked it, right?
I think that's one of the big things we're going to see for a while is Copilot's probably not going to make, or any of them aren't going to make the final draft for you. I guess they may for smaller things, right, or less important things, but you kind of have to be willing to go in and review it and make those tweaks. Especially, I mean, an about you thing is super personal.
Right.
But even things that are less personal, I think the same thing, right? I send an email out or a meeting recap. I still want to read through that and make sure that that made sense, um, or
Right.
just add some additional stuff to it, right? The things that make it something that I was a part of versus just a generic, here was your meeting, moving on. So
Exactly. I'm going to do one quick thing here. Um, I'm going to just jump on LinkedIn and quick let folks know that we're live if they want to join in. Cool. So Ryan, I mean, I think we should just kick off, first and give folks an idea, or I guess paint them a little bit of a picture, right, of why we decided to put this conversation together, why we're, hosting it in a forum where people can join, listen, obviously promoted it on LinkedIn. Um, let's just maybe talk about that a little bit. What's your thoughts, and then I'll chime in with my two bits.
my thoughts on where to find us.
No, just like why we started, why are we doing
Oh,
this today?
that's a rougher question. Um, so yeah, so we started doing this. We did a series of webinars last year that focused more specifically on licensing, on um, sort of trying to demystify a lot of the questions people had about Microsoft and Microsoft 365. But you and I have kept having these conversations since then, right? We work pretty closely together, and we would find ourselves in conversations with other people or other organizations and sort of be having these, not the same conversation, right? But the thematically the same sort of stuff kept coming up. Um, and we knew we wanted to sort of restart our webinars anyways, and this became a chance, like maybe we just have, rather than us trying to build PowerPoint decks and get demos, maybe we just have some that are more off the cuff and less structured, and just a conversation, especially something like AI, right? AI is going to change so quick. There's so much stuff going on with it that if we plan something out 3 months in advance, by the time we have that webinar, all the stuff we planned 3 months ago is either going to be wrong or so outdated that we're going to be redoing it anyways.
Yeah.
And it's just a chance for us to sort of have a conversation, be talking with people, right? Engage with people who are on the call about this, and just sort of talk through what we're doing, what we're seeing. We have access to a fair amount of stuff that most people don't, just because internally we have access to Copilot and some of the stuff we can do now, and just sort of just have a casual conversation about that and what we're seeing. So, and I feel like
Yeah.
every time we talked about doing this, we'd end up on a tangent of like, that would have been a really good thing to talk about on this call, but instead we talked about it with just the two of
Right.
us on a Teams call.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like the amount of information that's out there is extremely overwhelming. And we hear that on the daily, right? When we're not only working, with our customers, but also like even when we're having conversations internally with each other, trying to figure out, hey, what's most up to date? What are we doing? What's available? And I think in a lot of these, like you said, just kind of off the cuff conversations, like that's really where we're able to unpack, a lot of what's out there, really digest the content, and just be able to make it like really real world and relatable to either what you're doing on a day-to-day basis or, what type of problem maybe your organization has, what you're trying to solve, of course. So I think that like we had some fun, and I think those webinars we did previously, like you mentioned about the M365 licensing and the value add, like those are great topics. And indeed, I think we'll still talk about that. And it's something that, even since we last spoke about that topic, it was Azure Active Directory, right? And now it's Entra ID is the new term that Microsoft has for, the identity side of our platform and our solutions. So to your point, like it's ever changing. And I think again, this just gives an opportunity to have a conversation, um, get people to have more of that layman term discussion of really just like, hey, what's going on in the Microsoft world? And I think obviously 2024 is going to be a big year. If you think about AI, like 2023 AI and the big one, right? ChatGPT was really front and center for just like anybody. I mean, everybody was going out. I think they gained 100 million users in like 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, just something pretty astronomical. And when I think of 2024, it's like, okay, now how are organizations, how are businesses going to actually take those tools, take that set of resources and use it internally, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking forward to, of course, the conversation. Looking forward to meeting some individuals. I think that, of course, there's a ton of stuff that we talk about on the daily that, to your point, like, oh man, that would have been great if somebody would got some value, right? If they would have heard that. So that's the idea behind this. And I think, we initially talked about a monthly conversation, but maybe if it's more often than that, maybe it needs to be more often that. But Ryan, just to set the stage a little bit, give us a quick background on you, where you've been, what you're doing.
Okay. Um, Background here is fake. If that's what you're asking. Um, so yeah, I come from state and local government initially. So I worked for the city of Boulder for a decade. Um, Healthcare before that. Um, and now I'm here. So that really informs a lot of the way I view this. Right, this
And
is my
Ryan, I think
first
you
like,
I think you should add, like, tech was not even where you thought you were going to be, right? I mean, you were an English teacher. Don't
yeah, well, yeah. So I got a degree in English. The goal was actually to be a doctor. Um, and I got good advice from someone that said, in case you don't be a doctor, pick a degree you can fall back on. And English, one of those things I talked about people know, if you ever want to get into like sales or PR or anything, English, if you can write, you can do anything. So I got a degree in English, which I loved. Ended up not going to medical school. I got into medical school, realized when I got the letter I didn't want to do it, so I moved to Japan and taught English for a couple of years in Japan, just to get away from everything. And then came back and decided I was going to get into tech. That I like technology, so I ended up working for the city of Boulder, not in IT, but I could fix computers, and they kind of went, "Oh, this is convenient. Let's get him into IT," and it went from there. So it's been a really interesting journey, but I think this is very similar for a lot of people, right? In the way that very few of us, I think, have that straight shot. And I think the way AI is going to go for people is you may have an idea in your mind right now of how you're going to use AI, how that's going to work for you. And I can almost guarantee you it'll work like that, but it'll also work a million different ways that you're not thinking about yet. That's something that Grant and I have talked a lot about when we talk about our customers, talk about other stuff, is like, I can think of some ways that I would have used Copilot when I was in city government. And we had a call yesterday with a customer who said the same thing. Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could do that thing? And we both went, oh, that's what I thought too. But then he had a bunch of other things he said. Oh, it'd also be great for these other uses. And so for us, it's been, yeah. Anyways, we'll get to that. Sorry. So that was my background, right? I have been extremely technical for a long time, but a lot of experience in other fields. So part of that breadth has allowed me to not necessarily be a mile deep in things like healthcare or education, but I know enough that I can sort of envision what may be possible, right?
Yeah.
When I was there, it would have been great if I could have done X, or
Yeah.
having been a patient recently at a hospital, boy, if they had something like Copilot, some AI assistant to help with note taking during these sessions would have been really helpful for the doctors and the nurses,
Yeah.
right? They're not focused on their computer. Instead, this thing is transcribing and summarizing, and they can just then review their notes in the room with you. And
Yeah.
they're spending more time actually face to face engaging rather than having to deal with the burdensome, you know, overflow of information they have to maintain for insurance purposes.
Yeah. No, agree 100%. And just tell me a little bit quick too about, your role here at Microsoft and what specifically you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm a customer success account manager, um, which I feel like is one of those titles that means something different everywhere you go. Um, but I support state and local government customers who have unified contracts, which are Microsoft's sort of premium support contracts. So, unlimited support time with engineers, bunch of proactive services. But essentially, I help my customers manage those and make sure they're getting the most out of it that they can. So I'm not on the sales side, which I appreciate, but I kind of still end up doing a lot of proactive selling because I know what it was like to be a state and local government employee and sort of manage that environment. And so I get to go, if you had this one extra thing, or, you know, they keep mentioning, something they want to do, and I know what that product is and how it could help them. Then I had that conversation with them, where I bring someone like you into it, and we had that conversation with them, and hopefully, you know, help them out.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I think it gives some good context and clarity, in your background and what you're doing today. And I think the really unique thing about you is you had the boots on the ground experience before you came to Microsoft. And the amount of credibility that establishes and creates with your customers is pretty hard to beat, right? And like when I see you interacting with customers that, we work on together, like you're an extension of their team. I mean, you're obviously doing the on-sites, you're having the conversations, you're helping be the problem solver. So I can't speak highly enough, of the unified support organization. I think that when we flipped, that program from the traditional Premier model, which was, mainly reactive, to the unified model of, hey, let's really get in there and help organizations leverage the tools they have, you know, follow the industry best practices for frameworks that are out there, whether it's security, compliance. Let's help them implement and onboard, tools to help their end users be productive. And then, of course, like, yeah, if the break fix is there, the reactive support, yeah, that's a part of it. But I feel like you can just eliminate so many of those things by the proactive piece, right? I mean, it's no
Yeah.
different than like I go to the doctor and it's like if I have a problem and if I would have, potentially, taken better care of myself or not done that high risk activity or whatever, like could have potentially prevented even the reason I'm sitting in the doc's office, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea that I view it as.
Yeah, and Brian just posted like problem avoidance for the win, which is absolutely correct. But the problem we run into a lot as an organization is it's not just us making those decisions, right? So I could be the smartest dude in the world and build my environment is not going to break, but I have users who are there. I have contractors, other people who are coming in, partners who now demand certain things. And this is, I think, one of those sort of watershed moments we're going to start seeing is what happens. Here's what happens, right? So how do you get ahead of the fires? And that's one of the things that you'll hear a lot of people, right, is in IT especially, is we're just putting out fires all day, we're putting out fires. And I did a lot of work with the City of Boulder Fire Department. Colorado does a lot of wildfires. So the wildland fire guys talking about how they typically don't try to fight the fire, they try to get ahead of the fire, build a fire break, right? Because you're not going to put out a 1,000,000-acre wildfire. What you're going to do is find a way to start getting rid of its energy source by building these fire breaks where the fire has nowhere to go. And so it feels kind of, I don't know, not backward. Right? If you're not thinking about it in the right way, you kind of go, well, obviously you're going to go start dumping water just on the fire. Well, no, what you're going to do is you're going to let the fire burn for now and get ahead of it. So in IT and at Boulder, that's a big part of what I did, right? Was trying to get ahead of the fire. Now, rather than, you have some computers with problems, I can spend all day fixing those, or I can get ahead and, try to get the underlying issue. And so scripting was a big part of that, a lot of automation. And people would go, oh, now they're just trying to get rid of, some of our IT jobs by automating it. But no, I'm trying to give you the ability to focus on what's really important, right? Don't do the mundane tasks. And now suddenly we've got these tools, the Copilot tools, right? Where we're sort of expanding past like, oh, I could script to install software. Well, now I can I can automate, meeting recaps, emails, generating Word docs, PDFs, PowerPoints, like all these things that take up part of your day. What if you didn't have to do that? What if you could just click a button or type in a natural language query and all of a sudden, yeah, there's your answer. There's this information for you that wasn't there before, right? And so you're freeing up yourself to focus on the things that really require human touch, right? Not the things that just you're sitting there just let me make another RFP for this. Why?
Yeah.
Let the software get the first or second draft of that done, and you can touch it up, send it off, and what used to be a couple hours is now a 20-minute process. So now you're free to focus on things that are actually going to be impactful and beneficial for you. And so I think that's one of those pieces I think we're going to start to see as people get into this. I don't think we're going to see, like my job is not going to be AI'd away.
Yeah.
Instead, I'm going to have the ability to be better at my job because I have a new tool that's available
Yeah.
that's going to make this all so much easier and more efficient.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with
so
you.
you can
And
keep doing it the old way, but why?
right. Yeah, I mean, I love that story, that analogy you tell about the, the wildfires, and that like makes it very easy for me to understand, right? And I'm more the non-technical person, right? So to give people a little bit more idea of who I am, so I joined Microsoft right out of college. Um, so really, Microsoft for the last 7.5 years has been the place where I've grown up a little bit. I've gotten into obviously just understanding what it's like to work, in the corporate world. I've had the opportunity, of course, to learn a ton. Really, my background was finance, so it's more of a business and sales type of background, and I thought I was going to get into financial services for my career. Um, but this, opportunity at Microsoft to get in at the ground level for when we moved to this inside sales model in the city that I'm in Fargo was like, okay, that's a pretty interesting opportunity. Um, so like my biggest thing that I've relied on, what I've really built kind of my career and my brand on is I love just being super curious, right? About, hey, what types of things are our customers, working on? What types of problems are they trying to solve? And then marrying that with obviously the Microsoft solution that can help them, solve the problem, be more efficient, more secure, all the things. So I think why you and I get along really well is, I've got the really kind of the business acumen slash, I mean, even like on in my personal life, like I love entrepreneurship. I've got a couple of, startup businesses that I've created. Like I love that whole business world and like how can we be more efficient? How can we be more effective? What are things that, C-level employees are thinking about? What are things that, of course, IT is thinking about? But then also like how are the end users perceiving the technology? How are they using the technology? And trying to really like be the intermediary between all these parties is something that I feel like I've been able to do a really good job at. Um, so again, I think why we work so well together is you've got the technical chops, you've got the hands-on, experience, and now of course you're, doing great things internal, and then I can go to the same customer and say, hey, let's really talk about why this is important. What's the ROI on your investment? How can we, increase efficiencies? How can we reduce risk? Um, so hopefully that gives, the listeners a little bit more clarity of like who we are and hopefully why what we're saying has some value.
Yeah. So speaking of the value, do we want to share some AI things?
Yeah. Do you have any specific areas you want to start? Or, I mean, I know
Yeah,
obviously.
I've got a couple things, and this, I mean, so, and we could share things that you can't do, right? By you, I mean everyone else, that we have. And I know, things like, so maybe first talk about Copilot. What is Copilot? Copilot is a term that you're going to hear. You've already heard a ton, I'm sure. You'll only hear more of it. There are going to be a million Copilots. Not to say I'm happy with what Microsoft names things, but there's Security Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, there's Copilot for the web, there's Copilot for Power Platform. So it's one of those things, right? People start
Copilot
talking
for
about,
sales, Copilot Studio, Copilot for
yeah,
GitHub.
yeah. And so we had too many Copilots, right? This is like too many cooks in the kitchen, I think. We had a call with the customer yesterday, and their CIOs, and it was like, well, like, tell me, like, we're interested in Copilot. We're like, okay, but which one? Right? Like there's going to be a ton of them. And so I kind of want to preface this by saying I will try to specify which co-pilot I'm talking about, but it's not always going to be something that I do. So I would tend to focus not on necessarily the name, but the functionality for a lot of these things.
Yep.
So I'm going to share my screen real quickly and just kind of give you an idea of a couple ways that I use this all the time. So I publish a tech newsletter every week that I had been doing for customers for quite a while. And one day talking to Grant, again, I think he focuses a lot on sort of the bigger picture of some of these things. He was like, "Why are you not doing this like for like on LinkedIn or somewhere else, right? Like, I send it to a couple dozen customers. It goes to about 30 other CCMs who send it to their customers. Some a couple hundred organizations get these newsletters every week. But why are we not like why not show it around more?" So I started doing that. And one thing I do is, because of the trauma of my technical past, I still spend a lot of time looking at tech news and reading through blogs, and on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X because that feels weird. Follow a lot of people on Twitter still that I look at their news. And so what I do is I put together, this is just an example. This is what I'm doing for this coming week. It'll end up being 15 to 20 pages before I start sorting it through, but I just know the title, a link, and then a description, which is normally okay because a lot of articles will include a description. A lot of YouTube videos will include a description. I run into some like this one where it's just like essentially like not even a paragraph. It's part of a sentence, and that's the whole description, which doesn't really do a good job of explaining what it is. If I want someone to like click on this link and learn more about what the video is, right? So I could watch it and write it, or in Edge you should have a Copilot button at the corner. So if you click that, I can just go down here and say, write me an engaging and informative description. I'll spell description correctly. You actually know how to spell it correctly, but of this video. And I'll hit go, and then it will essentially use the transcript of the video and information in the video to write something. So let this slowly run through here. But
Yeah,
I can do this. So go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, not to derail this, but while I was thinking, let's talk quick about, see how it says protected up there, and it says work versus web. If anybody wants today, you can go out, to Bing, and you can start leveraging Copilot as long as you're signed in, right, with a personal Microsoft account, Outlook. I mean, you can even use any account, right? You can go sign up for this stuff and start to familiarize yourself with it.
Mhm.
I think what's really interesting is, of course, a lot of folks are, interested in, okay, Copilot for M365. Yep, that's an additional paid seat, paid service. If I recall in my research, you can get this, right? Bing or Bing Chat Enterprise Copilot, right? Hooked up and protected to your organization if you own, I think, really any of the M SKUs,
Correct.
even the business SKUs, right? M365 business. And you can have the ability to interact with your internal information kind of running out of here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I'm not going to show you anything involving that, because
Right.
I'm not going to show the work side of this because I don't want to
Oh, of
start
course.
revealing information on this thing. But yeah, so I think this is one of the things that I wanted to point out what it could be doing to help, right? And you may not have a lot of YouTube videos or other videos that you're trying to show information about or grab a description of, um, at work for something that's going on. You can see it, it did a pretty large description, some bullet points. I could ask to make it, and it'll give you additional things, right? Some other options to ask to follow up. I could have said, I'll do this again real quick. I'm going to say, write me a concise description, because really I don't want much. I just need like a paragraph of this. So we'll say, write me a concise thing, and now it's going to do it as a shorter thing. But you could skip, instead of doing video, maybe you're going to do a just a website, right? There's some website that you want to use. We can do I had this open from earlier. You could have it summarize the website for you. You could have it summarize a document for you. I don't really have a good document to use, but
Yeah.
I could use Copilot here to do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Hey, summarize what this document is, or find the financial data in this document and show it to me in a chart so I can better understand it.
Yeah.
If I click summarize, it's going to be a nightmare because it's, at this point, 9 pages of links.
Right.
So the summary is going to be
this might be
horrific.
a fun one. This might be a fun one.
To see what it says, yeah. But again, it's one of these tools that you have access to that, and this is what I think Grant and I keep running into is I can think of a million ways to use this, but I know there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be way beyond what I'm thinking about, right?
Right.
You're going to have some additional use that I don't ever use. Stop. This is going to run for a while. Oh, no, that's fine. Oh, I just grabbed a couple of some main ideas there. Future of Cloud and Government Innovation episode. So I said this is one of those things. How you start using Copilot, how it's tied into things. Even within Word itself, you're going to start seeing some draft with Copilot options for things, right? So, and I think Grant, you had a couple that you showed us the other day, sort of help look at that. But this is, I don't know. I think I'm really excited to see what people end up with, but the ability to just natively in the web, grab a URL and go look at it, right? Summarize this for me.
Yeah.
And people are doing this already now. You can just go ask Bing Chat these questions, but pull up a list of things like, I need a new vacuum cleaner. Hey, summarize all these for me, right? Tell me what this looks like. Yeah, Brian, that's a great point. Those prompts.
Have you tried the have you downloaded the Copilot app for your phone?
I have.
What's been your experience? Have you used it much?
I have not really used it much. It's a bad example for me to say that. But no, I feel like I do so much of my work on my computer at this
Right.
point, and I sit at my desk all day, that there's not much I really spend time there. It's not like already in an app.
Right. I
No,
think
unless I'm like in the Lowe's app or something. So I'm working on my
right.
house right now.
What's been so interesting to me is like, we've been playing around with this, using it quite a bit. Obviously 8 to 5, but from like an end user perspective, and this goes back, I think, to my point of like the direct consumer has been introduced to these tools, right? I mean, I would be pretty surprised if you couldn't find somebody you knew who hasn't used ChatGPT, right? At least to play around with and to start.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's done, at least for me, is it's gotten where to the point where I'm kind of like, I would much rather just interact with Copilot than go out and like do my traditional means of search. Or like, hey, even if I have a quick question, like it was New Year's Eve, a couple weeks, here ago, and my wife and I were gonna, have some friends over, and I'm like, oh shoot, we got to run to Costco. Like, typically, I mean, it sounds silly, but like this is just kind of, I think, how it's gonna get involved in people's lives, right? Is hey, typically I'd just go out to the website. Yeah, I think it's 10 o'clock. They open. I know that, but hey, let's just double check. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to ask Copilot. So I just like, hey, ask when is Costco open in Fargo? And it says, oh, it's open at 8 today. I'm like, well, that's odd. They open at 10. I'm going to go double check. So I went out and looked. Well, they were having special hours for this specific day. Right. So I'm like, to me, that was just one of those things where I'm like, holy crap. Like, this is actually that powerful. And it's not just, something flashy where, hey, yep, we're grabbing this stuff. It's, yeah, kind of up to date, not really. Like, it is real time gathering this information, getting it back to you. And like, I'm still typing the prompts, right? But I mean, they'll get to a point where I'm just going to start having conversation, just talking. Hey, let's just start talking, right?
And so
And
actually, I want to point out real quick. Adam posted basically a large prompt that he's been using for researching companies. And this is, I think, where, right, because to your point, Grant, like being able to talk to it is going to be, right, like, I mean, there's already devices like Rabbit just launched their new, or is launching their new, like, handheld AI device that you just chat with, essentially, verbally. But having something like this, right, that you said, no, you're going to build out this prompt, and to Adam's thing, right, you can, maybe in a week you go, oh, that's another question I should ask it, right? You
yeah,
add it to the prompt, and now all of a sudden, right, you have this sort of this template that's going to build out. So when you look up a company, you're getting the same information every time.
yeah,
Something you can just sort of, how long would it take you to do this otherwise, right? If you were going out and like, let me go search for all these little pieces for this company versus, hey, Copilot, go grab it, and I'll see you guys. I'll come back in a minute when it's done, and all the information's there.
yeah,
Which is going to be, that's going to be useful. But you're right, right? It's even beyond the stuff we use it for, right? The Costco, what a weird one-off example, but that's how most people are going to use it, right? Most people are going to use it throughout the day like that. We talked to a city government the other day about how they want to use it, and they were saying it'd be great if, like, for a council meeting, you could walk up and talk to a kiosk and just say, "Hey, I want to make an open comment at council today. Here's my name, here's my topic," and it's like, boom, got them registered, right? But what if they don't speak English? Well, that's fine.
exactly.
Do it in
Yeah,
Spanish. What if they, something else, right? There's no reason that we need to worry about limiting this. Um, so that's what I'm really excited about. I mean, Adam mentioned Microsoft Designer, right? Using the tools that are there with Dolly and in Paint now. Um, for my newsletter, every week I make a new. I had to go talk to my wife, like, what should I do for my picture today for my newsletter? And I get in, and I just type, make me a picture of a skier skiing down a mountain with like some digital code around him and a cool vista behind him. That looks like crap. All right, let me make what's the new one I can do. Right, it's not really what I wanted, and it just
yeah.
makes it like suddenly I'm an artist because I
Hey,
can just describe a
Adam really
picture.
likes them. Adam said he likes them. They are pretty good. I mean, they are pretty good.
It's wild. Like it feels so unreal. Like this is one of the few times I feel like in my life that I'm like, oh, I'm living in the future. That I can just like write a thing, right? I can
Yeah,
just describe it, and somehow like the art feels more futuristic. Like the text, sure, right? Like computers can write words, cool. The video and audio, or video, audio, and picture are what feels so much more surreal to me, and I don't know. I mean, I know why, because it feels like a leap in capability that I
yeah,
feel like we went from Chat GPT to DALL-E in like a couple of weeks. I feel like people are like, oh, Chat GPT, it's amazing. So I was like, oh, you can just have it like also make pictures. And aside, don't look at the teeth or the fingers normally, but the rest of it normally looks pretty darn good. Um, so of course now people are selling. I don't know if you've seen these, Grant. People are selling like rings you can put on, and it adds like an extra finger to your hand.
yeah.
So if someone sees a picture, they assume it's like AI generated because you've got the wrong number of fingers. Um, which I think is a like a weird sort of like, if you want to go commit some crimes, wear these rings, and people think it's really AI generated, not a real video footage of you because the fingers are messed up. Um, but
Speaking of that rapid growth you talked about, I remember a um, it's called Moore's Law. Do you know what that is?
yeah, the doubling of storage
Storage. I think but it's even like,
and processing power. Yeah,
compute processing. We got to be way past that by now, aren't we?
no, we're still bound.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
It
quantum is
just
going to be when we break that.
we break it.
Yeah, but I mean, but to your point, yeah, it's because we're so far now, right? It still feels
I suppose.
wild.
I
Um,
suppose.
do you want
One other.
to? Oh, go
I
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think another interesting one. So to go back to this idea of the co-pilot, like the term, this umbrella, right? I mean, co-pilot really, I think, and it was described pretty well by our executives that like co-pilot here is your assistant, it's your sidekick, like it's how you're going to interact, right? And really do things with AI. Um, and like I think it's that term or that idea that I think is what, I love to talk with people about because it just gets the juices flowing and it doesn't confine them into M365 Copilot, right? Because that's like, oh, it's the
Yeah.
apps. So it's like, well, I don't make PowerPoints. Like that's not going to be helpful. Or I don't, I'm not writing job descriptions. That's not going to be helpful, right? So I think what I'm going to quickly show is Copilot Studio. Let me know. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
So I think this was, and again, you
I was
talk
saying
also about,
this is co-pilots. It's already plural on the page, which is even more confusing. People are gonna be like, "Wait, what's happening?" That's what I say. Like, I keep telling people, don't focus on the name. Focus on the like. And you mentioned right, it's the functionality that's important. Or maybe you don't do PowerPoints.
right,
Cool. Me showing you a PowerPoint. No. Oh, you can take a Word document, turn it into a PowerPoint in like 30 seconds. Amazing. But if you never do PowerPoints,
right.
who cares?
So I think this was super kind of eye-opening for me. Um, I was on a call yesterday with a client. They had a chat bot, on their web page, and I was sharing screen and I asked their chat bot, "Hey, do you have any open positions at your organization?" The chat bot thought for a while. It thought for a while, and it returned, "Sorry, I don't have an answer for this. I can't help you." Okay. So I took the same question and I said, "Are there any open jobs at Microsoft?" I didn't use Microsoft. I used the organization's name, of course. And all of a sudden, oh, okay, here's a couple examples of open positions at your organization that I literally did off of a test environment in 30 seconds. Like, and the customer kind of was just like, we need to talk more about this. And so I think the point of the exercise was just to show like it doesn't have to be constrained to even what like Microsoft, we don't even know what the full capability of this stuff is. Like there's so many things that are going to be discovered. There's so many ways that this is going to intertwine and interweave within an organization. And that's like what for me almost like kind of gives you that mind numbing feeling where it's like, and it's kind of that weird feeling where you're like, I kind of like this, I kind of don't. I need to just like close my eyes for a few minutes. But it's like, for me, it's super exciting.
Um, I as I say, I can show another thing there. Looking at because I don't have to worry about customer data. I guess you can just too. If you want to go back to the Copilot studio and start a new one and put in bouldercolorado.gov. I'll use my old employer for this. Um,
Is
just I
it the
think it's
full?
yeah. Oh yeah. Which I hated typing in every time I did anything. Um,
I look right?
yep. Um, so how about this, right? So this is city government. When is the next council meeting?
Uh-oh.
Hold on, maybe just city council meeting. Nope, that works for me. Maybe the live demo gremlins. Click on the bouldercolorado.gov link up there. Huh. Well, it works fine for me, Grant. I don't know what you're doing wrong here.
Well, you go ahead and share.
I'll share real quick. But yes, this
I think,
is.
and to remember, like, this has not been tuned at all. I mean, this is just a basic demo, like, and
Yeah.
that's, I think, still what's just crazy about it.
Yeah. So I typed in a couple questions while we're sitting here. Does Boulder have any open jobs? Here's description of some jobs, and then there's a link to more of them. How to pay my utility bill? Quick description. When's the next council meeting? Here's the date with a link to the meeting itself. And so the ability to start to look at, like, how do these chat bots work, right? Rather than you having to, like, build out the question to figure out what the answers would be, you can just start to ask it questions like this, which I think is pretty exciting. Um,
Yeah.
this would be a thing here. But it's kind of fun sometimes to just jump on there and start to see what you could do, because you may find yourself, thinking of things you hadn't really assumed you could do before, realizing what you could be doing with it differently. And the fact that it also adds links to the site and make it even easier for you. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, to our point of, like, the possibilities are endless. So this idea of Copilot, right? Or this we'll call it a family of applications or solutions. Like, there's no limits to it. Like, yep, right now it's pointed at a website, but hey, let's point it at a database. Let's point it at just whatever. And now we're going to have an internal individual in a company use it to help, gather information, um, you know, look at trends, all these different things. I mean, I was having a conversation with, I think it was an internal team where we were talking about ideas, for cities and counties. And the, like, use case was, hey, if you, like, right now, most people have got their, and I don't have it here handy, but you've gotten your tax statements, from your local city for, hey, here's my home, appraised value, here's what my taxes are going to be. And if you want to go through the process to get a new appraisal or dispute, the assessed value, like, okay, you call in, you sit on hold for a while, you talk to somebody, they go, okay, we got to pull the file. It'll take 3 to 5 days, and we'll have somebody come out and inspect. Like, there was a use case that we built out that essentially reduced the time it took for that process from, like, 5 to 7 business days down to, like, 4 minutes, right? Now, granted, if you need to have somebody come and appraise your property, like, yeah, you got to have probably in-person people, but, like, even just the information gathering takes those teams a lot of time. So, like, the time savings piece, like, that's the big thing. It's the time savings. And time, of course, is a finite resource. Like, we we all would love to be able to do more, right, in the time we have, or in the time that we do have, like, to be as efficient as possible. Of course, our bosses and the companies love it when end users are more efficient. But I even think, as an end user, when you're more efficient and you don't have to do those mundane tasks anymore, you're happier, right?
as long as the efficiency is not worse than the task,
Yeah,
right?
agree.
And I think I hope, and I mean, Adam mentioned showing his kids how to use AI search. That's the big thing I keep seeing is, like, AI is not going to replace it. It's going to replace those who don't know how to use it. And so, yeah, being able, I mean, this is the problem we had before is, in IT, people go, I don't know how to do X. Did you look it up online? Yeah, but I never could do it right. And you're like, oh, because you don't know how to actually word a proper search, right? Did you put it in double quotes? Did you use it, dash not? Did you, like, all these things you can do to, like, filter the search, try to make it work better for you. Well, now it's natural language. And so, well, I don't really know how it asks this. Let me just try something, see what comes up, right? Hopefully people are less afraid to just say something to the search engine.
Right. Oh,
And same
exactly.
thing, Brian mentioned Copilot Studio. it'll be the same thing there. Right? All these things are going to just start building up in a way that I think people are going to realize, let technology be your co-pilot. Oh, so many co-pilots. But yeah, it's going to be, I think we're going to see, not I think, you're going to start seeing so many of these things pop up. I think the hard part is going to be, one, they belong to us indeed. Is it going to be secure? Right? Because a lot of these things, you don't necessarily know where the language models end up. You don't know where that data is going necessarily. And two, are people actually going to use the right tools? We had a big customer event in Dallas over the summer, and the big question we got from people was like, how do we stop our users from putting our data up in some of these systems? Right? Someone uploads the financial data to Google Bard and says, hey, could you figure out how to how to format this properly for me? Does that data now live in the cloud for someone else to find? Who knows? So I think a big part is going to be providing your users the tools to do it correctly, because they're going to find out a way to do it without you. Right? They're going to be using these tools regardless of that you make it available to them.
Yeah.
So
and that's why it's important to have the policy, the planning, the framework conversations. Of course, Microsoft is early to the game of we have these solutions, available for folks, but there's a lot of, to your point, the compliance piece. Like, let's get the classification of our data set up correctly so that when Grant says, geez, man, Ryan, I just feel like he makes way more money than I do. Oh, pilot, how much money does Ryan make? It doesn't return the information to me. Maybe that's something that I could do today, right? If maybe if it's not protected today, I could go search through, an endless mound of documents in a SharePoint site somewhere, but it's going to make it pretty easy for somebody to have access to the information, right? With the tools. So, I mean, it's kind of a silly example now that we've used 101 times, but it resonates with folks where, hey, let's get what's your analogy? Let's get the fence set up before we let the horse out of the barn.
Yes. That's in my Azure thing for a while now for people is, if you're going to move to the cloud, please plan before you get there. And this would be the same thing, right? Except now it's not like you're going to turn on a virtual machine that's going to cost you $100,000 over a weekend. Instead, it'll be someone's going to put some data somewhere it shouldn't be, or they shared a document they didn't realize was shared that contains HR complaints, and someone's going to discover it.
That's a good one. Well, I feel like, yeah, Brian, you're that was an interesting one. Early, not that a few months ago was early, but seems early in this whole development of things. So Ryan, I mean, I think we got 5 minutes left, in at least the scheduled programming. I'd ask the listeners and I think we're going to have parts of this afterwards that are available. People want to listen to my plans to chunk up some of the good bits of conversation that we've had, and of course send them out to LinkedIn. But I think if folks saw value in this style of conversation, if this was interesting, I feel like there's a ton of additional content I'd love to talk about today. But of course, we got to get it wrapped up here soon. So if this was valuable, interesting, I think obviously even for Ryan and I, like, to make sure that we're being mindful of our time and mindful of Microsoft's time also. If you guys can, whether it's, comment, share, say, hey, this is something I joined and it was super interesting, you should take a listen. Any way that we can, of course, show that, hey, folks are interested in the topics we're talking about, we're addressing it maybe a little bit different than our marketing groups, or, just even what you're seeing out kind of in the wild from Microsoft. that is super helpful for us to hopefully keep this going. I mean, of course, we can do it on our own time, in the evening or in the morning, but I feel like this is a pretty opportune time to connect with folks and just have a conversation. Anything you want to close with, Ryan?
No, I would just sort of reiterate that, right? Like, I feel like we hoped there'd be value for people in these conversations. I'd like to, one, make them more regular, and two, figure out a way to sort of get people involved, right? To be either, if it's topics or questions beforehand people have they want to hear more about. I think we do a good job of running the gamut from both technical, process, and just general, technical or not technical, like, sort of industry experience and ideas. So if there's questions you have or things that have come up, we can talk about them. Um, this is supposed to be sort of off the cuff, um, and it was, but a prompt, to go with it right now. Getting the correct prompt and seeing what we come up with might not be a bad thing. Like AI, we may hallucinate at some point too and just go off the rails, but that's part of the fun, I guess. And this is seeing where it ends up. So
I love it. I love it.
yeah.
We'll wrap up. I appreciate, obviously you, Ryan, in being open for having this type of conversation, and appreciate everybody that joined live. It was fun to interact, with some of you folks in the chat. And of course, if you're listening to this after the fact, hopefully you got some value out of the conversation, and we'll look to get another one on the books. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us for this. I appreciated people jumping into the chat. I'm excited to see what everyone ends up doing with this stuff as they're going. So thanks for being here.
Have a great day. Bye bye.